Okay. Bringing C on June 8th, March 12th, 2080, Governor Newsom issued a 5-20. Please be advised that some, however, our attorney tuning in. Furthermore, on Executive Order N29-20, which waives the mandate of public in-person accessibility to council meetings, provided there are other means for the continuing only during the period in which the state or local public health and fish. The Clear Lake City Council meetings will be viewed only via health risks associated with COVID-19 business in a transparent and open manner. The city wants you to know that you can submit your comments and the city clerk at mswanson@clearlake.ca.us. You can also visit and submit written comments through our portal at https://www.open-townhall.com/portals/327/issue9055. That was a mouthful. Period. To give the City Council adequate time to review our questions and comments, please submit your written comments prior to 4 p.m. on Thursday, June 18th. As I understand, we have received one. This meeting and any future meetings, while under declared emergency, will not be viewable in person. You may view the meeting live on YouTube at Lake County PEG TV live stream YouTube channel. Okay, I think that does all of that. Again, June 18th, 2020. And the council meeting came together at 6:01. May I have a roll call, Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Overton? Here. Councilmember Clerk?
Here.
Councilmember Harris?
Here.
Vice Mayor Sewell?
Here.
Mayor Kramer?
Here. We stand, please, for the pledge. Chief, you want to lead us?
Yes, Mayor. I pledge allegiance to the flag for which it stands, one nation, under God, justice for all.
It remains.
Sir. Our kind and gracious Heavenly Father, we call upon you to guidance for our leadership. We ask that you would help us to improve the lives, that you would help us to make good to our Savior. Father, we ask that you would be with those who are and concerned by all the strife in our country, in our state, and here locally in our. We ask that you would calm those and protect those that are out. Bless them with your presence as well. And we ask for these things through our Savior, Jesus.
Thank you, Kelly. Guidelines, I will explain our meeting procedures. I've already gone over that, so I'm going to skip. So adoption of the agenda is City Manager Flora.
I'd like to pull item number 10. We'll consider.
All right. Okay. Council, do you have any changes that you would, or anything Is the agenda? No?
No, sir.
I have a motion then?
Make a motion to accept the agenda.
Motion is made by Councilmember Purdock.
Councilmember Overton. Aye. Councilmember. Vice Mayor Slaughter.
Aye.
Mayor Kramer.
Aye. Motion. Okay, we'll now move on to presentations. Lieutenant Tobbs, I assume?
Some stats.
Okay, well,
He's going to give us some stats.
report here.
13 dogs into the shelter, 125 have been arrested, have been adopted. So before I go over the last two numbers, the euthanasia, I want to say mainly these numbers are our animal control technicians spend a lot of time reaching out to rescue shelters, trying to find homes for these animals. I'm helping out, trying to find rescue. So of the 213 dogs we've taken in so far, live release rate is 93.4.
That's good.
Hopefully we can keep that up.
Yeah, I do too.
I visited the, you know, we just have a great staff there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Hobbs. Chief, did you have anything to add?
I'll just echo what the others are saying. Criticized for a long time about our release rates that you hear, both from the staff. I think the just before I started here, seeing, you know, the fruits of all these efforts come out and work out in a positive way for the animals and the role. And I think with the construction project going on, it's going to be even better. So, you know, contrived office in the garages, we tore down this stuff, and a porta potty and everything else. So I really appreciate everything.
Thank you, Chief White. I think so. Moving on to public comment. I think I've already gone over the comment. Madam Clerk, would you mind reading that?
We have one public comment from states. Lakeshore and Old 53 needs some attention. The left turn signal from Lakeshore staying on far too long without traffic present and is affecting good flow. This while traveling west on Lakeshore through that intersection. Of his comment.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and thank the gentleman for the comment. No more comments. We'll now move on to the consent agenda. All items listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a member of the staff has requested a change under adoption. Move for separate consideration. Any item so removed will be taken up following removed completely. So, anything you'd like to have removed from the okay.
Consent calendar with the exception of item 10, which
Vice Mayor Slotin, may I have a
Second.
Please.
Councilmember Murdock,
Aye.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Student,
Aye.
We'll now move on. Of our City Council, when considering the matters said, open a public hearing, be present appellant if applicable. Applicant or appellant rebut council comments and questions, and then council. If you wish to challenge in court any of the matters conducted, you may be limited to public hearing or in written correspondence received by the hearing. Public hearing noted and continuance. Any matter not noted. And during the June 18th, 2000 items will be accepted via email and through the city's town hall portal as explained before. If you would like to comment remotely, please follow the. So given that, we're going to now move, which is again limit for fiscal year 2020-21. The same. City.
Yes. So, this first item before you, process that we implement for the upcoming fiscal year. So the Department of Finance, they give us some numbers which are included here of the county, and then the also provided, and there's a formula based on that you can see there, Schedule A, and that comes up with the maximum appropriations limit. Compare that to the appropriations that are subject. You know, there at the bottom you can see that we would have the ability to have an additional $1.95 million in appropriations underneath. Any questions? There's the backup information that's provided by the state, but we would just ask the council to adopt appropriation limit.
Thank you, Ms. Flora. Are there any questions?
No, sir.
None?
Councilmember Overton? I'll now open this up for public comment. Are there any public comments?
no, Mr. Mayor, there are no public comments on this item.
Seeing none, I will bring it back to council for consideration and
Mayor?
motion.
If you're ready for a motion, I'd like to make the motion.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I'd like to make the motion that we accept resolution number 2020-26, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Clear Lake adopting the appropriation limits and designating the formula to be
By Councilmember Overton. May I have a second?
Second.
A second.
Councilmember Overton,
aye.
Council Vice Mayor Student,
Aye.
Mayor Kramer.
Aye. Motion passes. Number 13, adoption of a fee. Again, City Manager Flora, have a staff.
Munson to give the staff report on this item.
Aha.
Adoption of the annual budget. Staff reviews and updates the fee schedule as appropriate. There are several changes in the upcoming fiscal year, which you have before you in the staff report. We just want to point out a couple of changes. The police department now offers additionally, areas at Austin Park have been added for rental once the renovations are complete. This includes the covered tables at the playground and the dog park area. Staff also recommends reducing the deposit for a large private event and from $500 to $100 for. These are to provide strictly for the recoupment of actual costs, consistent with that intent. So I'm going to answer questions if you have them.
Questions, Councilmember
No
Burdock?
questions?
Councilmember Harris?
Nothing.
Councilmember Overton?
I do have one for sure. So are we doing life scans for the public? That's because I was just seeing that because we got that ability. And let me see, there was something else I think I had in here. Abatements for the vehicles. So I guess because there's different things here, so I understand the voluntary. So seems like voluntary compliance upon arrival and then voluntary compliance removed by the city. So if it's removed by the city, how is that voluntary?
The AVA program works and what we charge. Understand it is they've established these fees so that program because we have to account for how much time it takes for us. So a certain portion of our allocation comes from having vehicles that we've put notices on, but then they ultimately left. You're allowed to get some of the AVA money to help support your overall abatement program. With regards to the other amount, the voluntary compliance removed by the city, I believe that has to do with, I want to help get this car off the property, and so they'll work with code enforcement. And I don't know that that's even charged all the time. Usually they'll just pass through the cost of the tow company or whatnot just to help get it removed.
So when it comes to abatement, like they get tagged and then we have to pick it up, do we get money back from AVA on that too?
We do, yes. But then really the money that comes back ends up being prorated out, so it's not like
Bill somebody for that removal, then you, or
no. Sometimes get payments from, usually that's a rare exception. It get back like probably well over tenfold. Okay.
I have one question. And your vehicle. You have unattended vehicle. What exactly, as opposed to abandoned vehicle, or what is?
So I've never actually cited for it, but to stand on any highway unattended without first affecting setting the brakes thereon. Go.
I had to ask. Seeing none, we'll open it. I'm sorry. Bring it back to council then?
20-28, approving the 20 through 2021.
By Councilmember Purdock. Have a roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Overton?
Aye.
Councilmember Purdock?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Slutin?
Aye.
Move on to City of Clear Lake's budget for fiscal year 20. Well, Madam Clerk, or do you want to start with you?
Go ahead, see if she's prepared.
It says from Melissa Swanson. Miss.
Yes,
Go ahead,
Mr. Mayor.
City Manager Flora.
Ms. Swanson did prepare the staff report, but I'm prepared to give the council the presentation about the budget. So we have a few slides looking through the OpenGov platform where we prepared the budget this year, and feel free to interrupt me at any point if you have.
And I want to comment on that. That's a great format. I was made it really easy for me to go back through and look at things, and if I didn't understand them, break it out further. That's is going to be a tremendous tool.
Great, glad
Seeing
you-
that, go ahead.
Glad you enjoyed it. So, just a real quick overview of what we'll talk about. We'll do a very quick review of the strategic plan, goals, and then sort of a proposed budget snapshot, some staff recommendations, and then we'll have obviously the opportunity for council to review and give any direction that you would like. So here's the 7 primary goals in the strategic plan. Making Clear Lake a visibly cleaner city. Clear Lake with improved public facilities. Improve the image of Clear Lake. Ensure fiscal sustainability. Update policies, procedures, and technology to current government standards, and city policies supporting economic development. So just a little bit of overview. We've talked about this a little bit over the last several months, but it's definitely a unique situation that we're living in. There's a lot of a lot of conflicting opinions out there on where we're headed, and but Beacon Economics is a firm that I think has in the past shown a history of a pretty good grasp on the market, particularly in California, and so definitely someone that I usually look to see where they think we're headed. A few things from their latest report. The recession related to the coronavirus will be one of the sharpest but shortest on record. Certainly we've seen the sharp part and we've seen some recovery. Certainly it remains to be seen if the shortest part is true, but we certainly hope so. And so, just how quickly the state's economy returns to full speed rests largely on the willingness of the public and consumers to return to their regular routines. We're starting to see that a lot more. But we're certainly not there yet. If you've paid any attention to the governor's May revise and what has came out of the legislature and is on the governor's desk, I believe still, California will have to make considerable budget cuts this year. Don't believe at the end of the day they will be as extreme as currently projected, and a couple of reasons for that. The Department of Finance's revenue forecast is probably overly pessimistic, showing no U.S. GDP growth at all, which is unlikely to be the case. And then another thing that's important to keep in mind is most actual California job losses have occurred in the lower paying sectors of the economy, which at least when you look at state revenues, we'll have a lower impact on those because they rely so heavily on the high earners, capital gains taxes, and so forth. There are a lot of economists that sort of have the impression that the budget deficit that was shared by the state and by the governor and was included in the May revise may have been at least partially a ploy to try and encourage additional federal resources to come down to the state to help out, which thus far has not been effective. So as we mentioned earlier, the V-shaped recovery is currently underway, very sharp decline on job losses in a number of other areas. We definitely are not at the bottom of that anymore. We're just hoping recovery back into sort of where we were before happens as sharply as possible. There's kind of a variety of predictions on whether that's going to take 2 or 3 years. Beacon feels like that we will be at pre-COVID levels of U.S. production by the end of this year, and unemployment will be back in the 5%.
I believe that the county unemployment rate is around 15, like 26%. Is that taken into account in all these projections?
I haven't seen those numbers. I'm not sure if the latest month's numbers have came out yet, but I haven't seen that our numbers were that high. We definitely lagged some of the other areas in how swiftly the unemployment rate rose. Some of the places, particularly in Sonoma and Napa County, rely a lot more heavily on tourism. Those numbers really shot up very quickly. They're definitely up, but I think, you know, if you look at the numbers historically, the city of Clear Lake and some areas of the North Shore in particular always have a higher unemployment rate than the countywide average. So I would expect that trend to continue.
I was just kind of surprised to look at it, how big of a difference was between Lake County and the city of Clear Lake, percentage-wise.
I hadn't seen the numbers where
It was
that high,
EDD as of May 20th. So it scares me a little bit that we're that much higher than the county average.
Well, so what the direction to the departments was basically preparing a status quo budget from 1920. We only included scheduled salary increases and made attempts to eliminate or at least reduce as many one-time expenses or contracted services as possible. No significant new projects or initiatives were included in this budget unless there was some specific funding that was attached to that. And then the revenue projections that we used, you know, there's some uncertainty on exactly how April, May, and June are going to end up looking, but when we see the actual numbers, and I'll go into a little bit more, I did get some sales tax reports from the first quarter just this week, so I have a little bit of information to share on that. But projections are based on kind of a moderate dip and a somewhat slow recovery. I do have some optimism that it's going to be a little less than a moderate dip, and it's going to be a more rapid recovery, but you know, we can't plan for the best case scenario. We need to, I believe, take a conservative approach, and then hopefully in a few months we'll be able to make some adjustments and focus on some of the projects and initiatives that we would all like to do. So with that, I will just pull up the OpenGov story, so the budget detail by department you see here, and so some of our revenue charts. Hopefully all of you had the chance to explore this a little bit, but this is our general fund revenue. You can see the mix and then the mix over the past few years. Property tax being the largest.
It's kind of a blank slate. I hope we're doing better than that.
Oh, well, there
Very
is a good
transparent.
reason for that. Let me fix that. Let me see here. There we Okay, so the screen sharing is not keeping up with me, but now we're fixed. So here's the revenue mix over the last few years. So you can see here that 8.8 million. Sales tax, the next largest. Grants, RTO, et cetera. So, you know, you can scroll, do a little bit more to certain revenue sources. Important is sales tax as an example. Here, and also budgeted a small decline in I guess thing that I want to point out is the vision and some of that whole ordinance and that program compliance, improve the image of the city, and address a lot of the blight issues that we have out there. But the timing on that has worked out fairly well for us because it has really helped offset some of the other revenue declines that we have right now because of those increased enforcement efforts. Because it is an important point. So you can see, I'm just going to kind of cruise through some of these. The bulk of this, of course, we have training and travel here on personnel. What's pension related time. Then you can previous have the most there yet. The most recent actuals we have are 17, 18, but will be included. Similar comparisons for all. For example, this number is larger because received our sales tax numbers here include our 1% Bradley Burn and Measure P revenues. So, this before, but maybe this talk about our sales tax a little bit. Sales tax consultants projections, however, we based on the assumption that most of the eligible businesses within the city may take advantage of the governor's program to allow them to defer sales tax payments for a year. Now, because this started prior to this fiscal year program, those sales taxes will be due within the 2021 fiscal year. Because it's over 12 months, but you know, there's also some businesses open have deferred those taxes, taking a worst case scenario there. However, if we look at the morning, horrible for us. Now, these are from first quarter, so this is us in mid-March, so there's a pretty impact on this, although in some areas, so generally, largest sector that we receive or industry group. We've talked before about online sales, a pool, and so online uses can't be associated with sort of tax from those transactions. And then it's allocated from brick and mortar in that pool increases, and so it's an industry group that we receive larger than the and things, which is
Well, what is the third?
well, cannabis is actually
How much is it, how much do we get from all the cannabis businesses?
related to each business, but I can tell you that the food and drug category goods percentages, and we have, you know, as you would expect, one large retailer that makes up the bulk of that. I'm not 100%, but it's 16% of the total from in the first quarter. It's a little bit interesting. So we can other entities within Lake County. So point of sale, so was actually down almost 7% last year.
Compare, that was 2 weeks.
Correct. But I mean, there's a lot of different ways. Lake County actually saw almost a 12. The city of Lakeport over 20 drivers to this is the one closure in the city of Lakeport. Increase, our pool increase over almost 17%. Our other declines, so it'll be interesting to see, but transaction and, you know, at the tail end of the quarter. A few other, just kind of to quarter before, if you dig down consumer goods category I was talking about before. So fuel down about 5%. 10%, building materials up 20%. Actually had about a 26%. Businesses up 23%. Appliances and electronics supplies up 6.5%. Overall, the gross receipts from the same quarter last year. There's a fair amount of variance, both You know, that's one of the problems with some of the projections. You have to be from HDL related to the code, granular enough level to market that much. So all businesses statewide, % decrease. And of course, that's and the county as a whole over here. Just a couple of things, you know, our transaction have are calculated. So, you know, again, well over double. So, you know, at least from this in any way to be insensitive revenues that comes from the larger businesses. Of our small restaurants, from a city revenue perspective, look at the top 20 for Measure V and Measure P, and 0.5% increase. Dramatically, our next quarter, but add with some of the believe that in large part, at least the
I would, you know, if you and see empty grocery stores, might be part, and people are at home and doing so.
yeah, and so then the final thing, you know, we've budgeted assuming that a lot of the it looks is doing that. That's not information that we that shows which businesses did not sales tax to the state in that quarter, and then they, I would say, more than normal. Anything in this quarter, and so we hope that continues. About revenues, in large part, some of those able to get enough additional assistance, other sources that they don't have to taking a loan for continue to operate. So view on what I was able to. If the council has any questions before we.
No, sir.
Mayor?
Yeah, it's just a comment. Particularly, I mean, a lot of will stop. Oh, I don't know if that's going to be this quarter. Tells you what's going to happen next year, but the first quarter.
Yeah, what COVID a little bit now, business is getting back. There are certainly concerns with how.
Well, definitely there's a lot of sort of stimulus payments did have a big impact. You're right, at least the additional, unless something has changed there. At the federal level about additional, there won't be any discussions about that until probably the last few days to see. It could have a big impact because franchise fee payments, but recycling facility earlier this week, and the amount of bad debt has dramatically reduced. Additional stimulus dollars that our community that happening.
Maybe higher ticket items were bought. I think a local appliance store said, you know, there's no freezers in town, and you can't get one until October or something like that. So there might have been purchases made that you have to, you know, stay at home and have to take care of things at home more. So tax probably from, you know, the home. And like you said, they had a 20% increase. And when did go people back to work? And that's the part that kind of, you know, first quarter of our fiscal year, you know.
Talked to a number of local businesses that sooner rather than later, because it's been difficult to get a to retrain staff, especially a lot of the food. I don't know, but roll through the rest of these charts real quick. We have between general fund and all funds created that shows number of allocated positions per this.
I'd say that again.
Police general fund 1, you can see measure P 7, etc. Pretty complicated allocation of some positions, you know, based on allocated to Measure V funding, for example. Some percentage of that is allocated to gas tax, or could be the Public Works General. And then, of course, like CDBG, General Fund Code Enforcement Budget Unit. That's one big shift. That CDBG responsibilities and reallocating the cost of those positions to the CDBG fund to help offset those costs to the general fund. Questions on that? I'll jump back to the so I just kind of like to go over any specific questions on adjustments. Of course, our department heads looking at overall staffing to be more salary costs and what is budgeted. In doing the new calculations this year, it was discovered that some of the 1920 personnel costs, especially some special duty pays and other things, were not calculated correctly last year, and they weren't really included in the budget numbers, and so increase more than just what we were planning. Increases in cost of living increases. A little bit more difficult than we were increasing. Increase in overall general fund revenues. Just mentioned code enforcement position, so and costs to non-general fund. There was a little bit of a and seeing if we could justify other sources covering. The adjustments were code enforcement. It was kind of compounded to cover salary costs, but grades and portions of insurance costs we started kind of reallocating that fund. That are funded there, so we just increase and they're promoted, those costs kept increasing, and we were able to cover all those projecting, and so P positions back into the and there's no transfer expenses from the year until we get general fund savings. Staff filled positions right now. We from the council, we did a recruitment on candidates when COVID struck in there position at all this year. This worker, unfortunately, recommend that we're going to have to get things. Fortunately, the is doing a and so it would be nice to areas, but funding them at this time. A couple other positions. Our community service office vacancy opportunity, and then we vacancies. Not recommending to. We are from not filling the CS and assuming that able to be filled months. Questions about that?
I don't know if you guys have looked at the school. Is this yes?
But the CSO is, you know, a non-sworn position, but this is not and paid for by Canocta Unified School District. You know, so one of the, you know, the CSO position type of thing. A lot of that, there's been a lot less transfer. Chief Whitefield take a little bit of time on that, especially we did have one new officer start this week. Probably the 2-month timeline for that second officer. So sorry if. Okay.
Tiers. Say that the CFO is.
Not directly. We have looked at functions that they don't involve, like handling prisoners. I think the city manager, I had a long same time, you know, the long term trying to over budget something here that we can't really. But you know, for city, however, we don't have a huge turnover problem. So we're kind of balancing that. Continue to have challenges with recruitment, so it's not an unrealistic.
And, you know, just so the council knows, discussions with looked at in any way at stopping the pressure to try and recruit police. A long time, it's difficult. And you shouldn't be looking at it this way. We continue to that full staffing. So
There's no funded line. We paid significant amount, but add that later if we.
I believe it was 400,000 to prepay some of that unfunded liability up until I think the end of July. So I think, you know, they'll take term, it would have some impact on sort of the interest or that there's an actual receive is over the long.
I'm okay with that though this year. We
Yeah, I mean, but
pointed out.
at least the 400,000 should be available. We budgeted the norm, and then we used a payment of 400,000. What was supposed to happen throughout the payroll, we had difference, right? But the additional 400,000 sets there so that, you know, it had been our money to be able to prepay. At this point, there isn't additional money.
I just wanted to point it out.
So I just have a few area. If you had any questions, department, I wasn't planning on clicking. Can do that if there's specific. City Council a little bit related to more precise year, so if you compare the two, it looks like there was some shifts, but those weren't done quite correctly last year. City attorney, we threatened to make some significant reductions in his budget, but there's no changes currently recommended.
Is he still listening?
Hopefully. He's sick of the same joke.
Yeah, stick his head up there.
No raise, that's all.
No significant changes in the city manager budget. Community development, I already mentioned, unfunding of the associate planner position. There is a pretty significant services that's related. We received about 100, and so we did get that money. I'm not sure. There's a few moving that forward. It was funded for housing development of our cost to update the zoning ordinance, developing, this is at least I think realization plan that as well. And no significant. See there the park, city engineer, and community. Their projects really this year, and additionally some of our fund to cover some is the Mullen project. But after kind of looking at everything, we decided to go ahead and move forward with that project, which is underway. And so, yeah, we kind of shifted things around there, but it's definitely a little leaner than it has been the last couple of years.
And in that, we noticed that there's a new pipeline going.
Yes, at the extreme last minute after the council approved the contract, Highlands Water did come forward. They did it fast. New water line in that street, so that's good. I think they realized when they saw the price, the moratorium on cutting into it and all the heavy equipment that was going to be up there, that they didn't want to pay for the road again. So that ordinance in place. Real changes in the city clerk's budget. We're building years. We've kind of gone back and forth over the past, but there hasn't been any significant no real changes in the first time home. There's some continued appropriations. The city, there's not enough to cover the costs of that. Work is being funded from bond proceeds. I've been working, this is something that was talked about council at one of our workshops. Are in the process of transition facility with a lot more traditional HR a little bit and is back where they should be under administration, more professional approach to of employee issues, and to help make sure that we have do that. Point out that NCO working with us on that. So, property management service interested in that, but we're on. So we do plan to do that on a 1-year agreement.
NCO?
Currently, but with some of the programs and funding sources that they have, they feel like they're trying to place folks, and they've been looking at ways to identify. So they thought it might be a good fit. High-level conversation, unfortunately, thought it might turn into. It's not viable based on that.
Has there been interest from, you're talking
With the city?
In my opinion, we will have a buyer that would not make it a. If you know someone who's interested in purchasing at a price that's consistent with what we paid for it, bring them on down. So the road project, we did include some funding for chip sealing project. We competitive prices. The county, we had some assurances from the county that they would come and be able to use their crews. Unfortunately, they have a new road superintendent that apparently is no longer interested in that partnership with us, and so we have put that out to bid again, but we're hopeful we'll get some competitive prices and be able to do this project. And then the local partnership project, so this is the funding that's available through SB1, so tax dedicated to roads maintenance, we're eligible under SB1. The funding that took care of the Civic Center project out here, a portion of that. So it was $100,000 a year that we're eligible for. The next year's money, so we just before COVID, the funding on that, they actually doubled the funding for that year. And we've applied for a project that's been on our MODOC and Second up in the north part of the city to rehab that.
Thank goodness.
We're speaking of the blocking some of those unused streets, or what?
No, on the advice of council, we have a few steps we have to go through, and so we'll be bringing that back at a later time.
Okay.
Okay, so just, excuse me?
I was sort of commenting tongue-in-cheek with Alan's comment on the advice of council, so you could blame it on me, which is the answer.
Sometimes we can't do things as quickly as I would like, but.
That's why we have him, right?
Okay, so facilities and other infrastructure, so this is mostly our Series A funding. So, a lot of that funding, which was supposed to have been spent many years ago, big bulk of that is being spent on Austin Park right now. So there's a little bit of funding that's carried over to complete that project in this next fiscal year. Most of it's already done, but there's a little bit in there. The animal shelter project, then of course the public works yard. And we are working progress this year. That has been allocated ahead and appropriated that funding. And then a few things for this that had been put aside for some projects there. A sidewalk project and some of the improvements that are still underway related to we have received some funding from the state to do some work. This would be mostly interior work, remodel work to the kitchen, almost $70,000 there. And then it's our intention to recommend to the council, we'll be moving forward with the CDBG public hearing process, hopefully very soon, but there's about $130,000 of CDBG COVID funding to clear that we have to go through for that, and normal things. This recommendation that the council, in addition to the $70,000 of state funding, to sort of remodel and upgrade an irrigation system so that we can have improve the look and functionality of that facility.
Funding coming to you with regard to the sidewalks very soon.
Thank Okay, so a few other key adjustments related to animal care and control. We did make a reduction in some of our utility costs due to the new facilities being while it was amazing, some of the local system and stuff there at the shelter, that building is expensive, and so we will see some reduction of appropriate costs related to CDBG. We definitely didn't want to do, but felt was necessary at this time was, and we've done a lot of property abatement work over the last couple of years. Some of that was but also the council has a that budgeted for that 1,000, so there's still a little bit there, but certainly not the priority things that we would recommend adjusting. Make sure that both the council and the community are aware of that reduction, because you know it's easy to go drive around town and see projects that need abatement, but you know we just have limited resources to be able to tackle that. Police department, I think I already mentioned the Measure P reallocation, salary increase. I kind of actually went over all this stuff already, but those are the actions that we had to take to make sure that the Measure P fund is structurally balanced. At this point, you know, we feel like the reserve level that the city has is too low. General fund appropriate reserve at this point and in the future. So we approved the first two items and have adoption of the next fiscal year's budget.
Councilmember Purdock, I'll start from the left.
No question.
Councilmember.
I'm glad with that we're going. I would, I have a cautious on the NCO thing. I think they're pretty much maxed out, and I feel that if we were to their test run, we need to do that, but I would seriously consider and I also using their programs to fill the facility, and I think that's what would happen. So, just want to throw that in there while we're talking about it.
Council, or Vice Mayor Slotin.
No comments, but I want to thank Alan and Chief White and Melissa for diligently working on this budget and trying to get it in balance. It's first of all, it's a trying time. We don't really know what the future is, and then changing over to a new format. It took me a little while to figure it out, but it's very comprehensive, and once you get the hang of it, of looking through it, it's very complete and very understandable. So thank you.
And I'll reiterate that Melissa and Chief White and City Manager Flora have done a tremendous job, I think, in putting this together. Again, OpenGov, I really like the platform. It does make it easy to go through, go back and forth, and do different, which is sometimes difficult to hammer things through. And the time that you did with me specifically on questions on the police side. So I will, with that, I will open this up to, I'll open this up to public comments. Do we have any public comments?
I've not received any public comment.
Okay. Seeing none, I'll close the public comments period and bring it back. Comments and action.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to adopt adopting the fiscal year 2020 through 2021 City of Clear Lake budget.
Second.
Motion was made by Councilmember Harris, and I think Councilmember Purdock for the second.
Member Purdock?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
Mayor Kramer?
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you again all for your...
I put it in my city manager message.
Said some of those other things.
No, I'm just saying, you know, I'm glad you both brought that up because, and, you know,
Yeah.
Chief White's, you know, he took that on, and Melissa did a lot to get the story format set up and all that. So just.
We don't need a finance director. Three of you, thank you very much. Item number 15, discussion and direction to staff consisting of a 21.25 acre city-owned parcel, Road, Clear Lake Park, APN 010 uses here. Mr. Flora.
Yes, so as the council is aware, in 2016, the city purchased this 21.25 acres on Ogulin Canyon Road with the intention of developing a public works yard and animal shelter facility. A number of plans were worked on council several months back. The city's growth and the property. So pursuant to the agreement that the city has with Mr. Hughes, we listed the property for sale and recently received a full price for the property. The only sort of deal point, I guess, of any significance that they asked for was a 90-day escrow period to perform due diligence on the property. And so I don't know if Mr. Hughes has anything to add or if the council would like to That's the deal we have on the table, and so we're asking that you authorize me to execute for the sale of the property for $398,000.
If you do, you got to step up there.
Dave Hughes, Mr. Mayor, and members of the 90-day escrow is to close. During that 90 days, the buyer would have 60 days to do her due diligence. Maybe meet with Alan and say, here's what I'm thinking about. I think she'd like to have a license maybe, but that may not be a deal breaker. I believe it would be cannabis related, but not growing, more in the processing and that sort of and those sorts of things. But the 60 days she wants to do before she proceeds with the purchase. As far as the property goes, I've had a lot of a full price offer coming before you this evening. I think so far has been, and when I mentioned that the city and the county, most of these people seem to go by the wayside. Outdoor grows and not have to go through a lot of the expense of generating something that will allow the indoor. In fact, I can't think of anybody that's contacted me that, including this morning. So I invited the agent. They did their walk around and wanted to, prior to this evening's meeting. Oh, it is conditioned upon, she interest rate not to exceed 12%, which I think is probably very. She has a number of different hard money lenders she works with. Cannabis industry now and has been real busy. I have not got in my mind, but and received other loans, and I feel confident that she'll be able to. So that wouldn't be a deal breaker. It'd be more during her due diligence, finding something that she didn't find appropriate to proceed with the purchase.
Questions? We'll start from this side. Councilmember Purdock.
So within that 60 days,
in fact, I would keep, or the pre-approval letter.
yeah, I think before, at least I'd feel comfortable moving forward.
Okay.
Councilmember Harris. Councilmember Overton. Vice Mayor Slotin.
Same comment.
Make that three of us.
So can I ask what that means? Hold off on approving or enter into an agreement?
Subject
To financing.
To derail what?
I could hold off on executing it until they provide it or something. I'm just, we haven't done this, so, but
Personally, I would at least know she has one that she's worked with that says, yeah, I'll
execute this. I mean, within that 90 days, she has to prove, correct? Okay, so.
Mr. Jones, do you have any thoughts on?
Let's do that.
No, I think that's why you have an escrow period of 90 days to provide for her to get her lending and to make sure she's comfortable with the purchase. So I don't think you need to have any conditions on the purchase or on the approval of this PSA at this point.
All right,
I agree.
thank you. All right, any other questions before I open it up to the public? All right, seeing some, City Clerk Swanson, no comments? All right. Action.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to Kim Gardner for the sale property located at
Motion has been made by Harris. May I have a roll call?
Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
Councilmember Overton.
Aye.
Aye. Moving on to management classification and benefit schedule.
Mayor, so there's kind
Thank
of
you,
two.
Mr. Harris.
At the beginning of each fiscal year, we like to adopt the updated city. The salary increases that have been previously approved. The management employees include sort of, it's an unrepresented unit really, based on the consumer price index, March to March one, all urban cities consumer price index. There's various of the CPI, but looking at the March 2019 CPI increased by 1.5%. That the council approved of, or not really members, but the and so bargaining groups, a 3% increase effective July memorandum.
This is just a limited number of employees.
Their level management positions, the superintendent and supervisor, those correct, Ms. Okay.
Thank you. Questions? Member Harris? Okay, and I open it up to the public. No public comment?
Make a motion.
Second.
For Purdock and seconded by Vice Mayor Slotin. May I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Overton. Aye. Vice Mayor.
Passes. All right. Move on to reports. City Manager Flora, you get to lead it off as always.
Thank you. in the most organized order, but our new police officer, Nathan Williams, started work here. We will soon or do have this time, so hopefully that one's also.
Awesome.
He's from, oh, cool.
Phone. So we added this to the website this over the approximately 15 by the hospital. And the city have been working with Center some time and trying to figure out. He's has some interest in doing associated with that and property and fall under the affordable housing within the state. These projects that have moved forward, they released a request for interest a month or so ago and got 3 developers that expressed interest in working on that project. And then, so because of that interest, they released this week for go to the state website and see this. Just one. If you know anyone in the developer community that may be interested, only a housing project, but also has economic development, medical offices and other things, let me know or feel free. So there won't be, so we are going to keep city meeting off on Thursday before, and some will be off on the Monday after, on its regular schedule. Council meeting on July the 7th, unless we have the need for. We're all aware that there will be July 4th fireworks here in the city of Clear Lake. That's organized by the Lions Club. Just a few comments on that. I believe the food vendors will open in the park at 3 p.m. So there'll be a few vendors available for food up until shortly before the fireworks begin. And then there will be some additional social distancing, appropriate that will be available for folks who, you know, requirements. I think everyone is supposed to be wearing masks. Hard on making this happen. There also is an encouragement if you have I mentioned earlier the Pearl Emery Mullen project is underway. You know, we did talk about, I didn't mention this earlier, but we did talk about extending that because the project came in under budget based on the fiscal situation. We are not planning on doing that additional project, and so not planning to come back to council and ask for that. We feel like we just need to focus on that core project right now. As I'm sure you're all aware, the PSPS season and the fire season are right around the corner. We've already had, one scary fire so far in the city, so there are a fair amount of discussions ramping up now with Dr. Pace and OES and others on some planning related to that, and identifying, there's really a need to identify a lot more shelters than normal. If we have a trifecta of COVID, PSPS, and a fire evacuation, it could be very problematic. So trying to plan for that. The generators that the council authorized a month or so ago should be here soon. I believe they're supposed to be out of the factory shortly after July 4th, and then they'll be delivered a week or two after that, so we're excited about that. A lot's been going on in the park. I think the light tomorrow or Monday, so getting close on that. Light poles add a great feature to the park. They look great. I'm excited. We will be getting a mural on. A lot of that exterior work has been done. We're still waiting on the interior stuff, but starting on that. I think darker because they use a projector now, but they're hoping to get at least one July 4th. So that'll be great. That they're focusing on.
What's the subject of the mural?
Well, show them to the marketing committee. So it's kind of a mixed image. So there's like an image of you'll appreciate this, Mayor Kramer, like a 57 Chevy with some people there, like the old cruising days, and then there's sort of a more naturalist part to the other side of it, which has some plants and like a honeybee or something on one side, and then I think the side facing back in the park will have some folks, kind of a retro looking image of some folks on Austin Beach, and then I think there's some wisteria or something with a large, or maybe I have those flipped, but anyway, like a large dragonfly kind of on the other side of it, but really nice design.
So I don't know.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't know if you mentioned it.
Give it to you.
Yeah.
When will they be pulling the fencing down, and will people be able to go into the park?
I did not mention it, but so we're planning to have it open. And there's a lot of last minute things that are being done. Goodman's looking very relaxed right now.
How's
But
the
he'll
grass?
be running tomorrow, right?
So, Lions Club have requested that we actually leave to kind of help contain the fencing down so that you can access the parking lots on both sides through the center of the park, but we're planning to leave the rest of it, assuming the contractor. So, and then hopefully all small, but we sent out an email this afternoon about sponsored things in the park, your council, the planning commission, like Adventist Health for their sponsorship on Friday morning. Come and participate in the flag raising, which we had delayed until this point. So that would happen. There would be some small refreshments, and then just the opportunity for those who participated in the park project to kind of walk the grounds and see it for the first time up close.
Since I haven't looked at
10 o'clock on Friday, the 3rd.
So the 3rd is when this walk-around's going, or when's the walk-around?
Yes.
The 3rd of
July.
July,
Okay.
yes.
Not tomorrow.
So in order to keep the group small, it's intended, And,
One of the ones that was out dragging money out of people, that kind of.
Yes, Mr.
Even-
Mayor,
even
you
if-
are invited. Okay, so there's a few funding-related things that I wanted to go over. This is the last thing really that I have. So we received a small cow recycle grant for $5,000. We just received that this week. We're going to use that to upgrade a few additional drinking fountains in the park. So interestingly enough, one of their programs is to try and limit the number of filler on it. So there there's 2 new drinking fountains towards the south. That one started leaking during the construction process. Put one over on the bathroom, I believe. So had a on some CDBG funding. There's disaster recovery, and part of their survey of unmet needs, they a lot of entities, including the city of Clear Lake, sort of complained about the flexibility of those funds and the need for funding for infrastructure, roads and other things. You know, it's a perfect example, the sulfur fire area here in the city. So they added all the eligible entities' unmet needs up and came up with like 145 million of unmet needs. So they didn't come up with 145 million, but they did come up with 36 million, which is better than nothing. So we're one of 17 entities that are eligible for that funding. They haven't created an allocation formula, or we don't know for sure how much of the pie we would be able to access, but it is intended to be used for drainage, slope mitigation, road construction, that type of thing. So keep the council posted as that moves forward, but we certainly intend to identify some type of project to try and get allocation of that funding. So I mentioned the CDBG COVID funding earlier. There's still a process that we have to go through to access with our consultant Lori Adams on that process. The state budget that was sent to the governor on the 15th, I don't believe it's been signed yet, but it did include some COVID funding for the cities that didn't receive, you know, earlier the CARES Act, cities in the United States with 500,000 up in population received an allocation. There is funding for cities in there on a per capita basis, so state funding to go to the city. Assuming the governor signs it, we would receive just a little over $187,000, but I don't know anything about what we have to do to access that or how that's going to play out. So hopefully it's not overly burdensome. And then the final thing is, I don't know if I mentioned this to the council before, but became aware of an opportunity a couple months back and have been having some discussions with the federal Department of Housing and Urban Development. And there's a Distressed Cities Technical Assistance program that they have that written approval, but the program administrator gave me verbal approval on last Friday that we would grant allocation, but you know, technical assistance. So there's a number of things, including like long-term financial planning of the city that we'll be able to get help with, assistance with utilization of our opportunity zone, perhaps development of infrastructure financing districts, all sort of economic development related things, developing additional incentives to encourage investment in our community. And so, I don't know, it seems like it could be a pretty interesting program for us. It's not a short-term commitment like they said that they expect to be helping us out for probably at least 3 years. But it seems like they have some good programs I'm not aware of or about that moving forward as well. So.
Thank you, Mr. Flora. I think we'll start on the other side. If you'd like to.
Thank you guys for, all of you guys for working so hard on our budget. And I know that was a big thing to make sure, and thank you for being conservative, because it's always better safe than sorry coming in and not utilized than I would. So thank you for doing that. You reported on the marketing committee from yesterday. I think that's going to be an awesome picture. I can't wait to work with them on other projects. The Arts Council is just something I think we need here, so I'm really excited that we're kind of getting more involved and bringing the art stuff down here. I think it's going to be a big difference for our community. Work with. It was nice going down there and seeing the project. Got this grant through the Senior Center for 26 pallets. If you know anybody that has an organization right now, I'm trying to funnel it out to. It's just somebody that may have get them the food first, and then we're working on a program to be able to give. It's a whole county-wide thing. We were very lucky to get that, and hopefully that'll be something that maybe we can get on. So the senior centers in Lake County, they do not anticipate us opening up any. So it wouldn't be feasible for them to open up. We're going to be kind of taking it month by month, but he's like, can you do this for another 12 months? So I'm anticipating that he doesn't think we're going to be opening up, but I have other thoughts. So, but, you know, it may be. I did not. Purdock will give a report on that. So one of the questions I had is how far are we on the fiber optics that's coming in?
The last update that I have is that they pulled the pole rope basically underneath the roadway, and that work has been completed. The next step is for them to actually pull the fiber and the.
So then we probably need to get together before too long.
Thank you, Councilmember Overton.
Of major significance to report, I've been pretty busy off the sign poles and whatnot, but and that's about it.
I have a question for you.
Sure, go ahead.
The baseball parks, I see that they're not being maintained at all. Is there some?
Yeah, well, they I spoke with the president of the Little League. Criteria in which that they want the children to adhere to in order to play baseball is essentially ludicrous. You can't get children to adhere to all of these very strict requirements that are needed to allow them to participate. It would be very, very difficult, and we just don't have the manpower in our city for volunteers, that is, for that program. But as far as like the maintenance of those fields, maintenance on the fields down in a couple weeks ago, I would say 3 weeks ago, and now they're starting to kind of overgrow again. Do some work there, but as far as the season opening, I don't think it's going to.
Too bad.
For all the kids have taken it between not being able to, can't really go out and do anything. They can't.
Thank you, Council.
I want to add something on to the, I have nothing else but the marketing committee. We did talk about going together with the Art Council for a $100,000 grant, which would be double to Olympic and Lakeshore, and they're all kind of, and we'd also talked about the banners a little bit. Since if we can get it organized and use those banners or wherever, how you got those, and use those similar ones for our Christmas parade and 4th of July parade in the future.
I think those are meant to stay up there. Those were.
How long are they supposed to stay up there?
Yeah, so they're going to be pulling the banners at the beginning of the next month here, but the anticipation is that the hardware will all stay in place, and just the banners will be given to the children, the respective child that owns the banner, and then those poles can be utilized for a whole slew of different reasons. And I would say during Christmas time, Christmas banners and stuff, of course, during the holidays, different holidays, we could have different banners up. So I think that the huge, it could be really, really decorative for our community.
Yeah, I would, like they have the seasonal banners, and that's what they paid to be able to use those.
I probably need to talk to you separately, but we're going to, for particularly with the chamber, to help us figure out
that, so she would have that information.
Okay. Report.
Thank you. Things were covered. I'll go on with the screen. Raft shed. The emergency evacuation shelter project is seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. We have more than $200,000 generator, the transfer switch, which you all know about already, and the shower trailer that's been, we finally got the building, arrived this morning at 7:30, and at this point in time they have, well, when I left for the council meeting, they have the ridge beam up on it, so it's moving along pretty fast. It's a little taller than I expected it would. For your mural project, I know that already got plans for it, but you can make a very, very large mural on it.
Well,
At any rate, Larka is the finance director on this, and the project was a coming together of the things that over more than $200,000 has been donated for this project, which is all going to be owned by the city of Clear Lake, including this check for $15,000 for a concrete pad for the shower trailer, so that we're not in arrears on that, and a nearly $25,000 check for the building when it's completed in a few days, which is what you see on the screen. As you can see, it's very, very tall. So it may actually give us an opportunity to do some storage, a storage loft if there's enough room after the trailer is moved in, and to allow it to be moved in and out. So I'm really excited about that. We can close out that project hopefully here in the very near future. And the city will benefit from that project. I would like to, when it, as we said, when it is done, have some sort of a ceremony of it. Hopefully we'll be able to do it with people actually being in attendance. That's basically all I have for tonight. So, any other?
This gentleman, Councilman Burdock.
Councilman Purdock, you've got to raise your hand so I can.
No, not
See
for
you.
council member reports.
No, if you want me to recognize you when I'm not looking your way,
Can I give my report?
you may do your report. I
Thank you.
apologize for forgetting you.
I attended the the Clear Lake Chamber meeting last night. Nothing really specific to at what we can do to help support the city. So if any of the small business owners, whether you need face masks as we proceed through the shelter or the pandemic, contact our chamber manager. To sponsor and other events that are coming up. So had a good conversation about that. And the Traffic Safety Committee, as Councilmember Overton mentioned, we did meet. I do want to thank and recognize our Public Works Director who participates and has done good work there. Of course, our Chief of Police and Cheryl Allman, our Citizen at Large, for participating in that. From our first meeting, action was immediately taken on a couple of the items that were brought before the committee, which is greatly appreciated. One was needed additional review, and I think Chief White is working on that regarding intersection visibility in the old Highway 53 Austin Drive area. And then some other things that had come up and complaints that had come in just regarding the current road conditions, brush coming out into the roadway and causing people to move into the oncoming traffic lane to avoid, those things. So just a request for people that are out there. We did get a couple of requests from the community for, much like we did for Mr. Hodem tonight. If you see something that you feel is unsafe intersection, you can email the city clerk or our Public Works Director, and that can be brought before the Traffic Safety Committee. And then last, I was interested and can attest to the opioid addictions and the impacts that it's had on our community. So I was very interested that the city of Lakeport is moving forward in a case against Big Pharma. And so I'm jumping ahead for future agenda items, something that we might want to entertain if we have consensus.
Did you want to say something?
I was just going to say that city attorney and myself discussed this today, and we're gathering some information to bring to the council on this.
For the Big Pharma?
Thank you. Yes.
Is the chamber working on that program for small businesses where they can apply for some money?
Through the SBA?
Through the SBA?
That was discussed. Essentially what we've learned is you have to submit your application on a couple of different times. Otherwise, maybe City Manager Flora could address that, but that seemed to be what people were experiencing, and we wanted to encourage the businesses not to give up on the first try, but to try a second and third time if they were declined.
And we had to apply several times. We went through West America. They were very quick and easy. But also is what about the one that Mary Ann with the Blue Lakes was working with? Have you seen that one?
Our president, Denise Luslow, is going to, I believe, meet with Mary Ann, but I didn't know. I don't have any more to report out on that.
Okay. I didn't know if the chamber was, on this end was involved.
Yeah, so, on the SBA stuff, I would say the Clear Lake Chamber or even the Lake County Chamber doesn't really have the technical expertise to help on that, but any businesses who are interested in technical assistance related to that can reach out to the Lake County Economic Development Corporation, which can help.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Slotin, you had a comment on?
Yeah, LARCA, our Lake Area Rotary Clubs Association, has a small amount of money left for businesses for our relief So they can contact and go on the website to see if they, we just have a small amount, because every time we start raising money, it's becoming less and less, unfortunately, but.
Is that the LARCA 5130 website?
Yes, yeah. We haven't gotten much publicity on it lately either, so.
It's the LARCA Emergency Relief Fund now is what we're calling it, instead of the fire relief. Even after we have these two big checks that go to that project for the benefits the city greatly. There was one other thing that I'd forgotten. I attended a meeting here a week or two ago from a couple of, or three gentlemen, Mr. Sabache and I met with them. They are interested in bringing a film commission to Lake County. I guess many counties have film commissions, and they want to be that for Lake County, and they would specifically like to locate in Clear Lake. They presented a proposal to me that I've read through, and certainly it's available if any of you want to read it. I believe Mr. Flora also got a copy of it, but there may be more of that coming up in the near future. So that is all I have for now. Are there any other comments? All right, seeing none. Future agenda items?
I have one.
Mr. Councilman Harris has beat you to the...
I would like to see, has Measure V Oversight Committee has any meetings lately? I mean, it's been...
Which?
Measure V, and a report from them in ages.
We scheduled it pre-COVID and then canceled it at the beginning of that, so.
And I will be also sitting down with you, see if we can get a schedule and send out requests. Hemp Oversight Ad Hoc Committee. Councilmember Harris.
So, I really just want to make mention of one thing that, as you all know, I'm not going to seek re-election. But in saying that, I do think that it would be time for us to consider a increase of the stipend for city council members. And I think that that should be something we need to really seriously consider as a that would be dedicated to the cause. In a unique position in life where you're either independent, you're at an age where you don't have to commit yourself to a significant amount of work, you're incapable of accomplishing this task. So I think that if we were to adjust our stipend to help benefit somebody who would be interested in participating as a city council member, but maybe would be so financially burdened by the participation, if we can offset that, we may be eliminating quality people by keeping our stipends so low. And if you were to do a direct comparison by the number of population that is affected by the supervisors of the county and what they receive for compensation compared to the number of citizens we affect, I think that ours is hugely askew. That's it.
Thank you, Councilmember Harris. I'm in agreement with that sentiment. So maybe a future agenda item to discuss that more.
Is that really something that we should be doing at this point in time when we just went over a budget where we stripped it down?
Well, it would be a mid-year
it's
budget review. I didn't want to add it to the budget for this year because I wanted me to exit as my position before it would take effect. So I held off to make that mention until we'd already accomplished our budget because I wouldn't want it to come through in the year 2020.
I think it is an appropriate subject. All of our staff have gotten raises regardless of the COVID, and as from our previous conversations, you have never had a raise since you've been here, or?
No, I've kept my mouth shut because I've tried to give it up, so.
Yeah. So at any rate, I do think it's appropriate for discussion. Anyone else? Anyone else with agenda items? All right, seeing that, we will now move into at 8:05.